As I mentioned in the first lecture, these lectures are meant to give you a critical introduction to the complex issue of bias. And I also said that it is very likely that when you finish this week, you will have more open questions than answers. But to leave you at a more optimistic note, I would like to present some future lines of inquiry. And these are a few things that I believe we could do and is valuable for us to consider as we try to tackle the complex issue of bias. I invite you to critique and co-construct these ideas further with me and with each other, both in the discussion board and in our synchronous conversation. I believe that there is value in focusing on developing theory and methods for understanding, identifying, and mitigating bias in algorithmic models used in education. And there's also value in conducting empirical work focused intentionally on contextualizing the experiences of diverse student subgroups. This is to serve the needs of all students, but also those who are likely to be underserved by bias systems. So towards these goals, I discuss three lines of inquiry. The first line of inquiry focuses on theory building for research, design, and practice. The often overlapping conceptualizations of bias and the harms they cause have themselves been considered a potential limitation that needs to be addressed as the work to mitigate it emerges. Hence, there is a new urgency to provide definitions and theoretical grounding for the known biases in technology enabling adaptive systems. We could respond to this challenge by developing a theoretical framework for bias, representing its sources, origins, impacted populations, and harms. And these are some of the categories that we have been exploring together this week and part of the discussion board prompts. By auditing real world systems, algorithmic educational systems, I hope that we can empirically test and further refine this framework. And through this work, I hope we can create a nuanced understanding of known biases to find ways to mitigate them and identify gaps for further investigation. I hope that it serves as a shared language for researchers, designers, practitioners, and stakeholders that can be used to audit for known biases in educational technologies. The second line of inquiry highlights technical approaches to mitigating bias. Through this, I hope we can develop context-aware algorithmic systems in education that consider student diversity by design. There are new approaches being developed for fair machine learning, and the general idea is to add fairness as a constraint while optimizing the model so that the model with the best fairness trade-off is selected. More often than not, the issue of bias or unfairness in these discussions is often conceptualized predominantly as a technical problem with little considerations to the real world context. But the problem of bias, however, is that there is no consensus on a definition of bias or what even fairness means. Fair to whom? And to answer, we need to take an explicit position on where we as a society stand on the social construct of fairness. We also need to define the groups explicitly, which is also not straightforward. For example, is it a specific race or gender or sexual orientation or a specific combination of those? As I mentioned earlier, one of the findings that we have in the field so far highlights how the group differences that matter the most, especially in edtech design, might not be the groups that are most eminently obvious to us. By grounding our investigations in an authentic educational context, I hope that we can test the limits of the advancements in fair machine learning by juxtaposing it with the complexities in the real world. And by doing so, highlighting the complexities involved in posing educational problems algorithmically. The last line of inquiry focuses on bringing the voices of teachers and learners in designing equitable human AI adaptivity. I believe that it is both an imperative and an opportunity to engage and empower stakeholders like teachers to participate in the creation of an equitable future. For example, instead of making assumptions about fairness definitions, we could try to elicit fairness understanding from stakeholders and potentially conduct collective audits to identify and detect bias in the systems that occupy their space. Now, I invite you to share your thoughts on some of the immediate steps you could take towards understanding, identifying, and mitigating the issue of bias in your context.